Thorn Garrison stepped out of his shiny sports car, a confident smile on his face. He adjusted his designer sunglasses, the sun glinting off the polished surface. To him, the world was a stage, and he was the star. Around him, the sounds of laughter and chatter filled the air, a perfect backdrop to his grand entrance. What he didn't see, however, was the man living under the tree's shadow. Sam sat quietly, his clothes worn and his eyes distant, watching the scene unfold. "Look at that guy," one of Thorn's friends laughed, pointing at Sam. "What a loser. Does he think he's going to get a handout from us?" Thorn's laughter joined the chorus, a cruel amusement that echoed in the space between them. "Maybe he should get a job instead of begging," he retorted, his voice dripping with disdain. The laughter grew louder, a sharp contrast to the quiet dignity of Sam, who merely looked down, avoiding their gaze. Just then, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Elijah, an old family friend, approached with a warm smile. Thorn's laughter faded as he recognized him. "Elijah, what are you doing here?" he said, trying to mask his surprise. "It's been a while, Thorn. I was just passing by," Elijah replied, his eyes scanning the group. "And I see you're still surrounded by interesting company." Thorn felt a flicker of discomfort. Memories flooded back, days spent with Elijah, learning lessons of kindness and humility. Those times felt distant, buried under layers of wealth and privilege. "Yeah, well, things change," he said, his tone defensive. Elijah raised an eyebrow, studying Thorn's face. "Do they? Or do they just become more complicated?" Thorn turned away, trying to shake off the feeling creeping into his mind. His friends continued to laugh, and he wanted desperately to join them, to push away the nagging tug of conscience that was beginning to surface. "Come on, let's get out of here," he said, trying to steer the conversation away from anything too serious. But the words lingered. As he walked away, Thorn couldn't help but glance back at Sam. The man still sat under the tree, a figure of quiet resilience amidst the laughter of the privileged. A knot formed in Thorn's stomach, an unsettling feeling that perhaps he was on the wrong side of something important. "Why do you care?" he murmured to himself, but deep down, a voice whispered back, reminding him of the lessons Elijah once taught him. Thorn shook his head, dismissing the thoughts. "It's not my problem," he insisted, yet the weight of his privilege felt heavier than before. Later, as they drove away, Thorn's friends continued to joke about the man under the tree. "What's his story, you think? Probably just another bum," one of them said, and they all laughed again. But Thorn felt a strange disconnect. The laughter felt hollow, a sharp reminder of the life he had built around him, one filled with luxury and shallow friendships. "Why do we even care?" one of his friends asked, looking at Thorn. "He's not worth our time." Thorn opened his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he felt the nagging discomfort grow stronger, twisting in his gut. Wasn't there more to life than this? As the car sped through the streets of Los Angeles, Thorn stared out the window, watching the world pass by. Shadows of people moved along the sidewalks, each with their own story, their own struggles. He thought of Sam, the man who sat quietly, and for the first time, he wondered about the lives of those outside his bubble of comfort. The laughter of his friends faded into the background, replaced by an echo of something deeper, a call for understanding, a desire to see beyond the surface. Thorn couldn't shake the feeling that his life, filled with privilege and ease, was somehow missing the point. And as he drove away, a small part of him hoped that one day he would find the courage to confront his own indifference. As Thorn Garrison sat in his luxurious office, the city of Los Angeles sprawled beneath him, a vivid contrast to the memories flooding back into his mind. A flashback washed over him, pulling him away from the polished desk and the screens that dominated his world. He was a boy again, laughing as he played in the sun with Elijah, his old family friend and mentor. "Remember, Thorn," Elijah's voice echoed in his mind, warm and gentle. "Being kind is a strength, not a weakness. You must always look out for those who are less fortunate." Thorn could see Elijah's smile, a beacon of unwavering compassion. Yet, that lesson felt distant now, buried under layers of wealth and entitlement. What does that even mean anymore? He thought, dismissing the thought as quickly as it surfaced. He turned to his current life, filled with expensive cars, parties, and laughter with friends, feeling the familiar comfort of his privilege. But something shifted within him as he gazed out the window. He watched the streets below, where the realities of life unfolded harshly. A group of children played with a worn-out ball, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the city. Yet, not far from them, he noticed a man sitting against a wall, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. Thorn felt a pang in his chest, a feeling he had long buried under his wealth. "Look at them," he heard the voice of one of his friends, Greg, sneering from behind him. "They're just wasting their lives. Who cares about them?" Thorn clenched his jaw, the words striking him like a sudden gust of wind. The carefree youth he once cherished felt so far away, replaced by this harsh reality. Memories of Elijah's stories about resilience and humility danced through his mind, contrasting sharply with the arrogance he wore like a shield. "Thorn, you coming to the party tonight?" Greg called out, snapping Thorn back to the present. The question hung in the air, but Thorn hesitated, feeling an unease that he couldn't quite shake off. "Yeah, I'll be there," Thorn replied, though his heart wasn't in it. As he tried to focus on the screen in front of him, the images of the man on the street lingered. He couldn't remember the last time he truly cared about someone outside his circle. The thought made him feel heavy, and he found himself staring blankly at the city below. "What's wrong, man? You look like you've seen a ghost," Greg said, leaning against the doorframe, oblivious to the turmoil in Thorn's mind. "Just thinking," Thorn muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thinking? About what? How to spend your daddy's money?" Greg laughed, and the others joined in, their laughter echoing through the room. Thorn forced a smile, but it felt hollow. In the silence that followed, he recalled the stories Elijah told him during their afternoon talks. Stories of people who overcame adversity with grace and strength. "You have to be aware of the world around you, Thorn," Elijah would say, his voice firm yet kind. "Life isn't just about what you have, it's about how you treat others." The memories clashed with the life he led now, igniting a flicker of doubt within him. Was he really living, or merely existing in a bubble of comfort? The thought made his stomach twist. "Everything okay?" Greg asked, his tone shifting slightly. "Yeah, just thinking about some old things," Thorn replied, his mind racing. "Old things? Like what? Your childhood?" Greg scoffed, clearly uninterested. "Yes, my childhood," Thorn snapped back, surprising even himself. The room fell silent as his friends exchanged glances. "Whatever, man. Just don't get all sentimental on us," Greg finally said, shaking his head as he walked away. The unease settled deeper within Thorn. He felt the weight of his privilege, the blinders that had shielded him from the struggles of others. Could he really continue living like this, ignoring the reality that surrounded him? As he stared out at the sprawling city, a new awareness began to awaken in him, one that stirred feelings he thought he had buried. For the first time in a long while, Thorn questioned himself, wondering if there was more to life than just wealth and status. Thorn Garrison stood beneath the bright sun, a familiar tension in his chest as he spotted Sam again. This time, Sam was sitting on the curb, his shoulders hunched and his gaze fixed on the ground. Thorn felt a strange pull in his heart. The laughter he had shared with his friends just days before now felt hollow, ringing in his ears like an unwelcome echo. "Hey, Sam," Thorn called, trying to sound casual as he approached. Sam looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Thorn," Sam replied, his voice low. "What do you want?" Thorn hesitated. He wanted to say something meaningful, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. Instead, he took a seat beside Sam, the weight of the moment heavy between them. "What are you doing here?" Thorn finally asked, his tone softer than before. "Just thinking," Sam replied. He looked away, his eyes scanning the street as if searching for something just out of reach. Life has a funny way of reminding you what really matters. Thorn felt a knot form in his stomach. He remembered the stories Sam had shared before, stories of loss, of battles fought and won, and of dreams that slipped away like sand through fingers. "Yeah, I guess it does," Thorn said quietly. Sam sighed, drawing Thorn's attention back to him. "You know, not everyone is as lucky as you are. Some of us, we have to fight hard just to survive. I've lost people. I've lost everything." Thorn's heart sank. He thought of his own life, filled with privilege and comfort, and the stark contrast of Sam's reality. "I didn't know," he admitted, feeling a wave of guilt wash over him. "I've been so caught up in my own world." Sam looked at him, his expression shifting from guarded to contemplative. "It's easy to forget, but the truth is, fortune can change in an instant. One moment you're on top, and the next, everything can fall apart." "What happened to you?" Thorn dared to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam took a deep breath, the weight of his memories pressing down on him. "I had a family once, a home, but then, things went south. My father lost his job, and we lost everything. I've been on my own since." He paused, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You start to see the world differently when you have to survive." Thorn felt the sharpness of Sam's words pierce through his defenses. He could no longer dismiss the man's struggles as distant or irrelevant. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never realized how much you've been through." Sam shrugged, a sad smile playing on his lips. "It's not your fault, but it's important to remember. Life isn't just about what you have, it's about the connections you make, the people you help, and the love you give." Thorn's laughter faded as he absorbed Sam's wisdom. Each word felt like a challenge, forcing him to confront the weight of his actions. The carefree arrogance he wore like a shield began to crack, revealing the vulnerability underneath. "I've been so blind," he confessed. "I've laughed at things I shouldn't have." Sam nodded. "It's never too late to change, Thorn. Just think about how your actions affect others. You have the power to make a difference." Thorn looked away, his mind racing. The world around him seemed to blur, and he felt an internal battle brewing within. Could he really change? Could he let go of the indifference that had defined him for so long? "I want to do better," Thorn finally said, determination creeping into his voice. "I want to understand. I need to understand." Sam's eyes brightened, a flicker of hope shining through the shadows. "That's a good start. Just remember, it's about more than just words. It's about actions. Show up for people, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard." Thorn nodded slowly, a heavy weight settling in his chest. The road ahead felt daunting, but for the first time, he saw a glimpse of something worthwhile. The laughter of his friends, the luxury he had taken for granted, all seemed insignificant compared to the lessons Sam had shared. As they sat together in the fading light, Thorn knew he was at a turning point. The laughter and arrogance that once defined him began to give way to something deeper, a yearning for empathy, connection, and a chance at redemption. Thorn Garrison stood by his sleek sports car, the engine still humming softly. He felt a rush of pride, but beneath that surface, a storm brewed within him. The laughter of his friends echoed in his mind, a haunting reminder of the cruel words they had thrown at Sam. Thorn's heart raced as he recalled the look of pain in Sam's eyes. It was a moment that had begun to chip away at the armor of indifference he wore so confidently. "Come on, Thorn, let's hit the club," shouted one of his friends, Jake, his voice full of excitement. The others cheered in agreement, but Thorn hesitated. "Do you have to be so loud about it?" Thorn's voice came out sharper than he intended. The group fell silent, surprised by his sudden change in tone. "What's wrong with you, man?" Jake raised an eyebrow, looking genuinely confused. "You're not still thinking about that guy, are you?" Thorn clenched his fists. I don't know. Maybe we should think about what we say sometimes. It's not funny to mock people like that. His friends exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. The tension hung in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Thorn felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps they would understand. Dude, lighten up. It's just a joke, Jake replied, a hint of annoyance creeping into his voice. You can't let one guy ruin our night. Thorn's chest tightened. It's not just one guy. It's about how we treat people. We're not better than them just because we have money. Are you serious right now? Jake laughed, but the sound felt forced. You sound like a loser. The laughter of his friends felt distant, like a fading echo. Thorn took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision. He had to stand firm. I'm done with this. I don't want to be part of this anymore. The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. His friends stared at him, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. Are you really going to throw away everything for a guy living on the street? Jake's voice was incredulous. Yes, Thorn shouted, surprising even himself. I'm going to help Sam. In that moment, Thorn felt a rush of clarity. He knew he had to confront the truth he had been avoiding. The realization hit him like a wave. True strength was not found in wealth or status, but in the ability to empathize with others and connect with their struggles. Thorn, think about your image, another friend, Lisa, chimed in. This isn't you. Maybe it's time for a change, Thorn replied, his voice steady. I want to be someone who stands up for what's right. His friends exchanged worried glances, and for the first time, Thorn saw the cracks in their confidence. They were not as untouchable as they liked to pretend. Fine, Jake huffed. Do what you want, but don't expect us to follow you down this path. With that, his friends turned away, leaving Thorn standing alone by his car. The silence around him felt both liberating and frightening. He had made a choice that might change everything. As he walked away from the scene, Thorn felt lighter. He could still hear the laughter of his friends, but it no longer held the same power over him. He thought of Sam, the stories he had shared, and the resilience that was woven into each word. Thorn's heart raced as he imagined how he could make amends. Upon reaching the park where he had last seen Sam, Thorn took a deep breath. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the ground. He spotted Sam sitting beneath the tree, looking lost in thought. Sam, Thorn called out, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Sam looked up, surprise flashing across his features. Thorn? Sam replied, his brow furrowed. What are you doing here? I want to talk, Thorn said, stepping closer. I want to help. I want to understand. Sam's expression softened, and Thorn could see the flicker of hope in his eyes. In that moment, Thorn felt a shift within himself, a connection forming, a bridge being built between their worlds. He was no longer just a man of privilege. He was a person willing to embrace the uncomfortable truths of life. Okay, Sam nodded slowly. Let's talk. As they sat together, Thorn felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of purpose that he had never known before. The journey ahead would not be easy, but he was ready to take the first step. Thorn Garrison stood at the edge of the park, his mind racing. He had thought about Sam often since their last encounter. The laughter from his friends still echoed in his ears, but now it felt heavy, like a weight on his chest. Today, he was determined to find Sam and apologize. Taking a deep breath, Thorn walked toward the tree where he had first seen Sam. As he approached, he felt a mix of nervousness and hope. What if Sam didn't want to talk to him? What if he had made things worse? When he spotted Sam sitting on the ground, his back against the tree, Thorn's heart raced. Sam, he called out, his voice shaky. Sam turned to look at him, his expression a mix of surprise and caution. What do you want, Thorn? He asked, keeping his eyes narrowed. Thorn swallowed hard. I came to say I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I was wrong. Sam studied him for a moment, his face unreadable. You think sorry changes anything? You laughed at me. I know, Thorn admitted, his voice low. I was a jerk. I didn't understand, but I want to change that. Can we talk? Sam hesitated, but then nodded slowly. Fine, but make it quick. Thorn sat down next to Sam, the grass scratching at his skin. What you said the other day, it made me think. You talked about loss and survival. I never really understood what that meant until now. Sam looked at him, curiosity replacing some of his initial wariness. You think you're the only one who's lost something? No, Thorn replied quickly. But I've been so wrapped up in my own world, I forgot there are other people out here. I want to learn. I want to help. Sam's expression softened slightly. Helping is good, but you don't get to just switch it on and off. It takes time. I get that, Thorn said, feeling a flicker of hope. I want to start volunteering, at shelters, anywhere people need help. Volunteering isn't enough, Sam replied, crossing his arms. You need to respect people. Treat them as equals. Thorn nodded earnestly. I understand. I want to hear your stories, learn from you, from everyone. I want to make a difference. Sam raised an eyebrow. You really mean that? Yes, Thorn said, his voice firm. I've been living in a bubble, and it's time to pop it. I want to be part of the world, not just a spectator. A small smile appeared on Sam's face, surprising Thorn. All right then. If you really want to help, start by coming with me to the shelter tomorrow. They need all kinds of help. Really? You'd let me come? Thorn asked, excitement bubbling within him. Yeah, but only if you promise to keep your attitude in check. No bragging about your money or status. I promise, Thorn replied, a grin spreading across his face. I want to earn your respect, not just give it. As they talked, a friendship began to blossom, turning their past animosity into something unexpected. They shared stories, laughter, and even moments of silence filled with understanding. Thorn realized he was learning more from Sam than he ever imagined. Over the next few weeks, Thorn kept his promise. He volunteered at the shelter, serving food and talking with the people who came in. Each interaction opened his eyes to the struggles and resilience of others. Sam was often by his side, guiding him and sharing insights that challenged Thorn's previous views. One day, while cleaning up after a busy lunch service, Thorn turned to Sam. I never knew helping could feel this good. It's like I'm finally living. Sam nodded, a proud look on his face. You're starting to see the bigger picture. Thorn smiled, feeling a warmth inside him that he had never felt before. Thank you for being patient with me. Just remember, it's a journey, Sam replied, his tone serious. You have to keep walking it, or you'll fall back into your old ways. I will, Thorn promised. I'm committed to this. I want to be better. As days turned into weeks, Thorn found joy in giving back. He began to redefine his relationships with his friends too, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to join him at the shelter. Slowly, he was changing, and with each step, he felt the weight of his past arrogance lift, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and connection. The sun hung low in the sky as Thorn stood at the front of the community center, a place that once felt foreign to him. Today, it pulsed with energy and warmth. People gathered, chatting and laughing as they prepared for the event he had organized. Thorn took a deep breath, feeling both nervous and hopeful. This was his moment to share his journey of redemption, to speak openly about his past mistakes, and to invite others to embrace compassion. As he glanced around, Thorn spotted Sam in the crowd. Sam, once a figure of ridicule, now stood tall and proud, a testament to resilience. Their eyes met, and Thorn felt a swell of gratitude. Sam had changed him in ways he never thought possible. Are you ready? Sam asked, a knowing smile on his face. Thorn nodded, the weight of his words heavy on his heart. I think so. It's just, I never thought I would be standing here, trying to inspire others. You're doing great, Thorn. Just speak from the heart. They need to hear your story. Taking a deep breath, Thorn stepped forward. The crowd quieted as he began to speak. Thank you all for coming today. I stand before you with a heavy heart, knowing that my past actions have hurt many. I was blind to the struggles around me, too caught up in my own life of privilege. A murmur of understanding rippled through the audience. Thorn continued, I used to think that wealth defined me, that my status made me superior, but I've learned that true strength lies in kindness and empathy. He paused, searching the faces in the crowd. I met someone named Sam, and he showed me that life is fragile. He shared his stories of loss and survival, and I realized how much I had overlooked. I want to apologize to anyone I've hurt, particularly to Sam, who deserves so much more than my past disdain. Sam's eyes sparkled with pride, and Thorn felt the warmth of support radiating from him. The crowd remained silent, hanging on to Thorn's every word. Kindness is not a weakness, Thorn continued. It is our greatest strength. I stand here today not just to ask for forgiveness, but to advocate for compassion. We all have struggles, and we must lift each other up instead of tearing each other down. As he spoke, Thorn saw Elijah standing at the back of the room, a gentle smile on his face. After Thorn finished his speech, Elijah approached him, pulling him into a firm embrace. I am so proud of you, Thorn, Elijah said, his voice warm and encouraging. You've come a long way. Remember, humility is key. Keep it close to your heart. Thorn nodded, feeling the weight of Elijah's words. I will, Elijah. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. As the event progressed, Thorn watched as attendees began to share their own stories. Each tale was filled with struggles and triumphs, and Thorn felt a bond forming among them. It was beautiful to witness. People he once overlooked now became friends. They laughed, cried, and supported each other. Thorn realized that these connections were enriching his life in ways he never anticipated. Later in the evening, as the sun set, Thorn found himself standing outside, reflecting on the events of the day. The laughter and conversations echoed in his mind, but it was the feeling of community that resonated most deeply. Hey Thorn, Sam called out, joining him outside. You did amazing up there. People really connected with your message. Thanks, Sam. I couldn't have done it without you. You've taught me so much about resilience and respect. Just remember, it's a journey. Keep pushing for empathy, and you'll keep growing, Sam replied, his voice steady and wise. Thorn smiled, feeling the warmth of friendship envelop him. He knew he had a long way to go, but the echo of his former arrogance had faded. In its place was a new call, a call for understanding and compassion. As he looked out into the night, Thorn felt a sense of peace. This was only the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one where he would strive to be a better person, not just for himself, but for those around him. Share this story if you believe that kindness and compassion can transform lives. Leave a comment about a time when someone's support made a difference in your journey, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one.